Hello there, good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, whichever time you're looking at this. My name is Keith Ensminger. I am the NHS advisor here at Cumberland Valley High School. I also teach computer science. My co-advisor is Mrs. Dominic. She is an English teacher up in the 11th grade wing. The two of us are the advisors for NHS. There is a committee of 5 teachers who are the faculty advisory committee. We'll talk about them momentarily. All of what I'm about to show you is entirely on Schoology, and that's why I'm on this page. What you're going to do is first, go into your courses and find us. It should be added there. Once you're there, any updates we post are going to be right here on the opening page, but the material you need is under, ironically, materials. So if I click on that, for you, really you should only be seeing the one section, the marking period 3 invitees. So if I click to open that, if I go into this folder, I'm going to be walking you through what each of these represents here in a second, but I'm just going to start at the top, the information packets. So as this loads, let me talk about a little bit about NHS. If you're not aware, you are getting this, you're invited to begin the NHS application process because you have a 96% cumulative weighted grade point average. Any junior or first marking period senior who has a 96% cumulative weighted GPA and has been at Cumberland Valley High School for at least a semester is eligible for NHS, and that's why we have you added to this group. For those of you who do not begin the process, you'll be dropped from this group. No questions asked, obviously. It's up to you if you want to apply. This is not mandatory in any way, shape, or form. NHS, the ideals, the tenets of NHS, you have scholarship. You are obviously qualified for that because you have over a 96%. Also character, leadership, and service. And what we're going to do to measure those to see if you are worthy is probably not a great word for it, but if you meet the ideals of NHS, you have to qualify, and that's what this process is all about. So, like I said, this first packet here, is the information packets, and I'm just going to do the same view that you would have. You are obviously welcome to download this if you want to. There's a little button to download, but I'm just going to do it right in the window. So as I said, Mrs. Dominic and I, we are simply the advisors. We gather all the information and we advise. We do not say yes or no whether you're in or not. We pick a teacher from each of the major subjects as well as a non-core subject. You can see the teachers there, one from each subject area. The reason I want to bring notice to those 5 teachers, in addition to Mrs. Dominic and I, you cannot get any recommendations from the 7 of us. We want to remain impartial throughout this process, so the recommendations that I'm going to show you here in a little bit, you cannot ask the 7 of us to fill those out. You can obviously ask questions of us, but we can't officially fill out the recommendations. The first form that you're going to complete is going to be due back on March 5th on a Friday at 3:20. Please understand that we do adhere 100% to dates and deadlines. If you do not have your paperwork turned in by those dates, by those deadlines, we do not accept late work for any reason. No computer problems, no, I was sick, I was on vacation. We don't accept it, period. There's no questions asked. It's just, we don't accept it. So I want to make sure right off the bat that that is crystal clear. I know that, this being the, the introduction of this video, everything I'm about to say in this video, it's extremely important that you understand this is a process that's entirely on you, and it's your responsibility to fill these things out. We might provide reminders, tough to say. Okay, so like I said, just want to make sure you're aware of that. Okay, moving on then. So how does this process work? Well, throughout this process, you're going to be gathering several recommendations, doing some community service hours, and there's other requirements which we'll get to. But in all, you can read throughout this. I'm not going to read everything to you, but as I alluded to earlier, we have the 4 tenets of NHS. You have scholarship, character, leadership, and service, and it is a 80-point scale. and you can see how the points are scored. Again, I'm not going to read this to you. You can do this on your own. But what we're looking for in this, is that you have good scholarship, character, leadership, and service. And we gather that through the clubs you're in, the recommendations we receive, and the community service hours that you do. Disciplinary referrals. We check your disciplinary record all the way back to your beginning of ninth grade year. We don't go back to middle school or anything like that. But we do go back to ninth grade year, and anything that you have done, we do see. We see your entire record. So anything you have as far as academic dishonesty is obviously a very big one. Class cuts, things like that. Those are the biggest marks against you. Understand that there's nothing that can be in your file that would be grounds to immediately say we can't accept you, because we do take every case on its own merits. So we can't just say, hey, if you've had academic dishonesty, you're never going to get an NHS. We are not allowed to do that by the national NHS bylaws. Now, that being said, let's just be honest. If you have something in your background, in your record, if you have, you cheated on a test, that's a pretty big deal for National Honor Society. It's not just Good Grades Club, it's National Honor Society. And so just be aware, when you begin this process, we do check all of those things. We do also check your attendance record. There's been misconceptions over the years about what people believe we count and don't count for attendance. If you have excessive excused absences, that's fine. What we're looking for is, did you pile up enough tardies to class, tardies to school that you got detention? Did you have a whole bunch of unexcused absences, unlawful absences? So make sure you're handing in your notes. Make sure that you are getting excuses for your absences. But missing a day or two here or there, or being tardy once in the whole year, you're not going to get kept out of NHS for those things. We do also check your grades at the end of each marking period. You have to maintain that cumulative weighted GPA. You're allowed to fall down below 96 with your individual marking period GPA as long as your cumulative remains above 96. Should you fall below 96, we have to drop you from the process immediately. I also mentioned this earlier. Transfer students, you have to be at CV for at least one semester. The roll that I received, the electronic roll that I get from Mr. Robinson, I believe all of you are in here fall into that category. You're all either at CV or have been at CV for at least one semester. If that is not the case, contact me and we'll figure out how you got on this list. Okay. I also put up here, please understand, again, this is National Honor Society. When we ask you what clubs you are in, make sure that you're being honest about that. Do not falsify the information. We find out. All of the clubs have to turn in their roster to the main office for the drug and alcohol policy, random drug testing. I know, even though we're not really doing that this year, I don't think. We still do have record of the club, so don't lie. That's just a silly lie to be like, oh, I'm in Key Club, and then we find out you're not really in Key Club. That's a very big black mark against you. As far as the timeline goes, you'll begin this process at the beginning of third marking period here, and it will last through, because you're all juniors, it'll last through the first marking period of your senior year. So you will find out whether you are in NHS at that point, which I guess will be end of October or so. Because I know it's always concern with you applying for colleges and whatnot over the summertime, or if you want to do early decision and things like that. What we do is we encourage students in your position to simply say your NHS membership is pending. There are many schools around the country that don't even accept non-seniors in NHS. So trust me, they understand. It's not like not being in NHS is going to keep you out of college, I assure you. But yeah, on your application, if you are applying early, simply put your NHS membership is pending. That's all. Okay, scrolling down. Community service. As you'll find out here in a moment, you are required to do a certain number of community service hours throughout this process. At the 3 marking period process, we ask you to do at least 5 hours per marking period for a total of 15. Now, when I go back and I talk about the deadlines, that we adhere to the deadlines, the reason we're so gung-ho about sticking to the deadlines is because we encourage everybody to do their stuff well in advance. So if something is due at the end of March, for example, turn it in right now. Turn it in mid-February. There's no reason to hold on to it and wait till last minute. That's when people tend to forget things or have problems with things. Turn everything in early. So the reason I mention this is because I said you have to do at least 5 per market period, but what I'm saying is you need to have in a minimum of that. Meaning, if you do 12 hours this marking period, that means you don't have to do any more hours until the final market period where you have to finish up 3 more. We have people that turn in all of their hours after the first week and then they don't have to worry about it anymore. So I'll talk a little bit more about community service later on. I'm not going to go through, you guys are all responsible for this information. I'm not going to go through all the guidelines, but there are guidelines on what counts and what doesn't count for your community service hours. But again, I'm going to go back and talk about this later on. There are some things I want to talk about first. So in addition to having a 96% cumulative weighted grade point average in order to be eligible for NHS at Cumberland Valley, you also need to be involved in at least 2 school activities. They are the clubs, the sports, the music, all of the things we do at CV, they have to be school affiliated. So things like Hamden soccer, YMCA swimming, those do not count. Those are not school affiliated. They have to be directly from the school, involved with the school, and the whole list that I pulled from the West at the beginning of the year is right here. As you can imagine, because you've been at Cumberland Valley for a while, clubs come and go, and so you might find something on this list that no longer runs, especially this year with COVID, and you might look at this list and find out that there's things that have started that aren't on here. For example, I just saw recently a post about there's a neuroscience club or something like that. Please understand, like if a club begins and you become a part of it, that does count. It's just I can't keep this list maintained 24/7. I mean, clubs come and go so quickly here at CV that this is the posted list, but if you look for something that's not on there, please ask me. And certainly I can tell you whether or not it works. Now, this year with COVID, we've made some exceptions because we know some of you are at home with virtual CVVA, and some of you are not really comfortable participating in clubs at the moment. We understand that. So for this year only, we are waiving the requirement that you are in 2 school activities so long as you were involved with activities last year. Okay? Now, if you aren't in those activities this year, you have to do an extra amount of service hours. Okay, so again, let me be clear on that. If you're in 2 current school activities, that's the minimum. If you're in more, great. Again, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you the information packet here in a moment. But you have to be in at least 2 this year. But because of COVID, if you're not, then we'll talk about what you were involved in last year. Okay? I will wrap up with talking about the due dates. So for the most part, what we do is we have these things due at the last Friday of the marking period. So, for example, the recommendations you're going to get from your teachers, which, again, we'll get to in a little bit, those are due at the end of 3rd marking period. These are due roughly the end of 4th marking period. I don't want to do at the end of 4th marking period because that's last day of school, for obvious reasons. So this is near the end of 4th marking period. And then in the fall, because I honestly have no idea what the fall calendar is going to look like. I don't know when we're going to start. I don't know when the first market period is going to conclude. I'm not even going to try and hazard a guess. So we will update you on that due date come the fall once we know. And, it'll probably be over the summertime even. But because I really can't say what it's going to be right now, I'm just going to simply say whenever the end of the first market period is, that's when that final set of paperwork is due. So the first form that I'm going to show you is due on Friday, March 5th. But when I say on, I really mean do it before that. Turn everything in before these dates. These are simply the final dates. Most people that get into NHS will turn them in well in advance of that. Just because these say you don't need to do them before May and these come after March, Doesn't mean you need to wait until April or May. You can still do all these things in March. You can do them in February. Don't wait. Okay, so I would encourage you to read through everything. It's all in there. Let me now go back, and now let me show you this. So once you've read through all that, you've watched this video, you've read that, let me click on this link because this is the original information form. So let me read through this with you. At the top, completing this form does not guarantee membership. You are simply beginning the process. You are obviously not me, so make sure you're logged in as yourself. It has to be your CV school's email. You have to log in with that because the Google form accepts only CV school's emails. Put in your last name, first name, no nicknames, please. Make sure your spelling is completely accurate. Middle initial if you have one. All of you are juniors, so make sure you put in junior. This is marking period 3, so make sure you fill out junior 3. And then right here, please provide a list of school activities you are or have been in at CV, followed by the grade level you were active in that club. In order to be eligible for NHS, you must be involved in 1. At least 2 school activities during this current school year. Now, let's make sure we're clear on what counts as current. Anything you did in the fall, anything you're going to do in the spring, anything you're currently in from the time school ended last year until now and into the future counts as current. So, for example, if you participate in track, track hasn't started yet, you can still count that as current. Okay, so anything that you're doing, have done, or will do this year counts as current. Or have been involved in at least 2 school activities last year. In this case, you have to do an additional 5 hours of community service, 20 total instead of 15 during your selection process. So there's what I was talking about with the exception for COVID. For those of you that are not comfortable joining activities this year, so long as you were in 2 activities last year, that does count for us, but you do have to do 5 extra hours of community service this year. Okay, so you can look through this. It'll tell you the rubric for how we score it. The longer you were in a club, the more points you'll get. So something you were involved with for 3 years is worth more points than something you just joined up yesterday. Here you're going to put in all the clubs you've been involved in and the grade you did them for. So if you're saying I was in Key Club all 3 years, you're going to say Key Club 9, 10, 11. If you did something just this year, you're going to say baseball 11. So just put them all there, list them all out. I will sort through them and figure them out. Then you have to pick throughout this process 4 different adults that you are going to get a recommendation from. One of them is from a teacher you had in the past at the high school. Not the middle school, not the elementary school, at the high school. So a teacher you had 9th grade year, 10th grade year. For those of you that are transfer students, if you'd like to contact a former teacher at your old school to do this, contact me first because, again, the Google form is looking for primarily CV schools emails. So if you're looking for a teacher outside of that email domain, I've got to kind of do a couple of tweaks for you. So for you, the transfer students only, if you so choose, like if you're not close with the teacher at your former school, you can have a current teacher fill out your past teacher recommendation as well. And again, if you fall into that category, please contact me first. I'd like to, talk to a little bit more with you. You're going to pick a teacher you have this year to fill another one out. You're going to have one of your coaches or club advisors fill one out. And then you're going to have an adult who works with you in a community service capacity. That might be difficult for some of you. It does not have to directly line up with the activity you do. Like if you have somebody, you used to do work for them, you can still get them to fill it out for you, even if you're not directly involved with them this year. Okay, and this can be an adult outside of the school, as well as your coach. I know there are some coaches that are not staff members, so that's fine. That will accept outside email addresses. But I do need to know who you're planning on picking. You get to decide who is filling out your recommendation. So pick one who's going to fill out a good recommendation for you, obviously. The only exception, as I said, you cannot get Mrs. Dominic Rye or the 5 committee members to complete a recommendation for you. Then, all of these questions you must answer yes to, because if you don't, I can't accept you in NHS. Things like, I agree to participate in the chapter service project. I agree to do 20 hours community service when I'm in NHS. I agree to come to meetings. I agree to keep my GPA up above 96. I agree to, I agree that basically when I do this, I'm allowed to check your discipline and grades, and I understand this is not just good grade clubs. I do not accept late work, and so on and so forth. So you're going to fill that out, hit submit. It will give you a receipt. It will give you a receipt. Hang on to your receipt. If you don't receive a receipt, something went wrong. Again, this is your responsibility to make sure that I get this. So if you need to check that I got it because you didn't receive a receipt, let me know. But hang on to your receipt, because I had people in the past say, oh, I swear I filled it out. I said, well, give me proof. Give me your receipt. And they couldn't provide it. It wasn't in their junk mail. It wasn't in their inbox. And if that happens, then, I'm sorry. You have no proof. So hang on to those receipts. Okay, so that's the first one you're going to fill out. That is due, as I said, the first Friday in March. Coming back here then, community service. So, as I said, you have to do 15 hours or 20 hours if you haven't done any current activities. The rules for them are in the packet. They're also in this. It's, what counts, what doesn't count. Simple things like, you can't be paid for it. It can't be something like, I shoveled snow for my elderly neighbor. So before you submit something, make sure it falls under our guidelines for what counts and what doesn't count. If you have any questions about whether it does count or doesn't count, ask us. We, of course, understand if right now it's difficult to find community service. So this paper, if you want to call it paper, this PDF here, gives you some ideas for things you can do that are more COVID friendly, COVID safe. We are sort of relaxing a lot of our guidelines this year on what we do and don't count for obvious reasons. So once again, look over this list. Let us know if you have any questions. Going back here to our folder. Once you want to log your hours, this is the link that you will log your hours on. You click this. You'll come in here. You can see the due dates. You guys are the third marking period people, so your due dates are right there, March 19th, May 21st, and then in the fall. Okay, so down here you simply put your last name, first name, when you did it, how long you did it for, and what you did. You do not need a signature. This is National Honor Society. If you lie about the hours of community service you do, that is something that is on your conscience, and I don't know what to say. If again, this is supposed to be National Honor Society, not just lie to get in. So please be honest. Please log these properly. If you are logging multiple activities, log every single activity. Okay, so don't do like one entry and say, oh, down here I did this. It should be one date, 1 hour, one set number of hours, I should say. So if you did 3 different things over 3 different weekends for the same place, I want to know the 3 different entries. Okay, it goes under a spreadsheet, and then I sort through the spreadsheet. So I need to know each of the different dates and each of the different numbers for the total number of hours. So finally, I also alluded to the recommendations. So how do you give a teacher or a club advisor a recommendation when you don't see them? We're not giving paperwork this year. So the final link under here is a link called recommendation links. These URLs here, these web links, you are going to email or Schoology message the staff member. Oh, did I say Schoology message? No, don't use Schoology Messenger. Schoology Messenger, I'm going to try and stay off my high horse here. Schoology Messenger is a horrible messaging service. There's no way to really archive, save, search through messages, so please email them. Don't use Schoology Messenger. And that goes for contacting me as well. If you're asking me a question and then you ask me, oh, I sent you this a month ago, don't you remember? My answer is going to be no, unless you send it to me over email where I can file it in a folder and I can search for the answer, don't use Schoology Messenger. If you use Outlook, if you use regular email, great. Don't use Schoology Messenger to send these. They get lost, I assure you. So these are the URLs down here. Email the staff member using your student email account, not your home account, because it'll get blocked potentially. So email them using your student email, send it to their school email address, not Schoology Messenger. Ask them if they could fill a recommendation. Now, don't order them to, don't just send them the link. Tell them, hey, remember me, my name is blah, blah, blah. Would you please mind filling out a blah, blah, blah recommendation for me for NHS? And tell them which one you're asking them to do. Say, can you fill out my coach, can you fill out my current teacher recommendation? And then give them the proper URL, give them the proper web link. Make sure you're giving them at least 2 weeks to fill them out. Don't turn them in the day before and expect them to do it. We email them and say, hey, here's the cutoff. If somebody sent you a recommendation at this point, it's before it's due. No. So give them at least 2 weeks. And as I said over and over again, remember that you can't have either Mrs. Dominic Rye or the committee fill out the recommendations. So this is what you're going to send. Once you let me know the 4 people you are using as your recommenders, I have that on file. You are going to send these links to those people then. They do have different due dates. The past teachers due first, the club advisor and current teacher are due in the same marking period, and then the service ones due last. But as I said, you can get them all done at once and then you don't have to worry about it again. Because I know some of you already started this process back in the first marking period, the answer is yes, you have to get everything filled out again. We do not hold on to any old paperwork. Please fill it out again. Even if you have the same people fill it out, that's perfectly fine. But don't assume we're keeping stuff, because we don't. I get rid of all of it. Okay. That completes our video. The most important thing is, if you have any questions, ask. Don't just assume. Don't just ask a friend. Come right to the source and ask me or Mrs. Dominic how all this works. Because I understand, especially in our hybrid Zoom COVID world, things are a little bit complicated. But please do not hesitate to reach out. Have a great night or day or afternoon. Thanks for watching.